God is with us. Whether we see God or not, God is with us. It reminds me of a story written about 150 years ago. George MacDonald wrote this little story called The Princess and the Goblins. A story that heard about a little 8-year-old girl named Irene. And she lived in a big, huge house, and she was up in the attic one day, and lo and behold, her fairy grandmother appeared to her. And the fairy grandmother was talking to her, and there were some days she'd go up there, and the fairy grandmother was there, and some days the fairy grandmother wasn't there. And Irene said, "Why is it I can see you some days, and there's other days I can't?" The fairy grandmother said, "Well, Irene, here." She gave her a piece of thread. She goes, "You hang on," and a ring, and said, "You hang on to this ring and this piece of thread," and at the other end was a small ball. She goes, "I'll keep a hold of the ball." And she said, "Now, when you ever need me, you take that string and the ring, and you can follow that string." And Irene said, "Well, I can't see the string. I can't see the thread." And the fairy grandmother said, "Reach out, touch it." She was, "I can feel it. I can't see it, but I can feel it." So lo and behold, one day goblins came into the house. And Irene was scared. And she remembered what her fairy grandmother said. So she took off the ring, put it under her pillow, felt for the thread, and began to follow the thread. It led her outside. It led her to the cave of the goblins. And she thought, "Oh, I don't know if I can go in there." But she said, "My grandmother said, follow the thread." So she went into the cave, and there was a blockage by many stones, and she began to cry and thought, I'm going to go back. She turned around to go back, and there was no thread. The thread only went forward. So she said, "Well, I guess I have to go forward." She began to move the stones. Her hands became bloody, and when she made an opening, she heard a cry. Her friend had been trapped there, Curdy, and so she was able to rescue him. And he said, "I'm getting at her." She goes, "No, if we follow the thread, we'll be led to safety." And so as the story goes, of course, Irene continues to follow the thread, and it leads her to her fairy grandmother and to safety. Now, the writer, George MacDonald, who was a Christian, wrote this as a spiritual analogy for us. God holds the ball. We have a hold of the other end of the thread. We may not always see God, but we can always feel the tug of the thread. We can follow that thread, and God continues to lead us, guides us through all kinds of struggles. That's what Jesus said. Jesus told his disciples, "Come, follow me. Don't zig to the left, don't zig to the right. Follow me," is what Jesus said. And yes, there will be ups, there will be downs. Sometimes we'll say, "God, where are you leading me to?" Remember to keep following the thread that is God. That's what James is telling us. That's why he said, we'll be double winners. Either you're going to be a double loser. The double loser is the one who sits back and goes, "Oh, this shouldn't be happening to me. It's not fair. La, 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 la. I'm going to close my ears and shut my mouth, and hopefully it'll disappear." Or else we're going to be double winners and want to say, "God, I may not understand everything I'm going through, but I know you're with me, God, and you will lead me, you will direct me, and in the end it will be worthwhile. I will be triumphant." I was telling Pastor, even if it means death, we'll be triumphant. I go, Pastor, as I read history and I realize the first century Christians, what they went through. Can you imagine being thrown to the lion's den? Can you imagine as a believer being thrown into the Colosseum, the arena, and they let tigers and lions come out? And yet the history that I read, the Christians begin to sing praises to God. And I thought, I wonder if I could be like that. I wonder if I could be like those Christians in the Middle East who are being slaughtered right now. Where the Muslims, the radical Muslims are saying, either you convert to Islam or we're going to kill you. That's happening right today. And I thought, would I be able to make a stand? We sang at the first song, stand up for Jesus. Would I be able to make that? I'd like to think that I could. But that's what James is saying. We will have trials. We will have tests. But if we endure to the end, there's victory. There's always victory. Remember what I said last Sunday? God, or a couple of Sundays ago, maybe it was last Sunday, a couple of Sundays ago, God always has an encore. God always has an encore.
And God has gifts that we are given.
Amen.
Goes on to say, if we lack, we need wisdom. We ask wisdom in the time of the trial and test. Do we believe that if we ask for wisdom, we ask for that wisdom, do we believe enough that God can manifest that wisdom within us? You know, like Ricky was talking about being in, the lion's den there and coming forward, asking God the wisdom of what we would need to have at that moment. I think we'd stand if we believe that our God is able. We have stories where people were put in there. Daniel, he didn't get killed.
No.
We have stories about the three in the fire.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
We have lots of stories about God, the waters are parting. Do we believe that God has that kind of power to work it in our individual and corporate community lives? Because I was thinking about this morning, and it was just a little thought, is that there is some great wisdom in this room. But you know what I figured out? I think we've been holding it to ourselves. I think we have great wisdom, but we kind of stand back proud with that wisdom. Well, maybe we need to tell a brother or sister they're about to hit a wall. Do we want to take the risk to say, I love you, and I love you for this reason? Sharon was a friend like that not too long ago. She came in and she says, you have your house, your mother's house, the church, all those finances, all the trips you're making. You're not feeling good. You're going to stroke. This is the very same thing that I did when I had my stroke. She took the risk to give me the wisdom. And I thought, I better reevaluate and I'm into that place. Because I don't really want to have a stroke. Because I watched what happened to all that Sharon had to do to come back from that stroke. And the same with Ron. But I was headed right down that road. And she took the risk to say, I have some wisdom. I did the same thing. I was doing the same thing when I had my stroke. Not only did I do that, I started to get some tests to see where I was always afraid to do it my heart. Because my dad died when I was 11, and I was afraid I maybe inherited his heart trouble, but it's okay. Thank God she took the risk to tell me. Sometimes I think we get shy when we have wisdom. We hold it. When God gives us wisdom that makes the body stronger, sometimes that wisdom's got a little point to it. Sometimes it is. But thank God we take the risk to share it. I believe God is able to give us whatever we need, especially when we're keeping the main thing the main thing. Like Pastor Ricky likes to say in Troy, and when we're trying to help someone else. When I was up with Pastor Ron, he said, see this whole book? He says, it's right here. He says, you have that right here. And believe that if you ever need something from that book, it will manifest. Doesn't mean I still don't study. But it means when he told me that, that was the sealer in my faith to the call. That whatever would be needed, and I've had it happen, where all of a sudden, I just knew. I knew who gave it to me, and I knew who I thanked for it, and gave glory for it. And this is such a gem to offer to all our people, to have a more mature life that's steady, to stay in that faith, to have that joy. What's going to happen to our community who whined about all the tribulations they had as a gay or lesbian or bisexual, transgendered people, as it starts to become palatable? Their story has been built on their ouchies. The new people coming up aren't having as many of those ouchies. They're not being put in mental institutions. They're not getting shock therapy. They're not getting forced into other places as much as it used to be for us. They're coming out on the love, the labor, and the life of brothers and sisters that stood up and got laws and things changed. It's not going to sound too good after a while to be whiny.
No.
Our story, whiny.
Yeah.
They're going to listen just like those kids doing their homework. Text.
Yeah.
So we got to grow up. We are part of that fabric that got here, that God's people have always had some trials and tribulations.
And we're on this journey together, saints.
Right.
We're on this journey together. And my prayer, and I hope it's your prayer, I say, Lord, be the Lord of every trial and test that I encounter. Goes back to that. Let's keep the main thing the main thing.
I know you love that.
And you know what? What's the main thing? Jesus. Jesus.
Not God's way.
And all God's
Amen.
Amen.